Hello, and welcome to this short introduction to the I Ching with Solala Towler. Now, in the West, people are more familiar with the spelling or the pronunciation is I Ching, or sometimes even I Ching. The correct pronunciation in Chinese is I Ching. Jing means classic book. So the I Ching is sometimes translated as the book of changes. It can also be thought of as the book of transformations. Everything in the universe is going through transformation all the time, as are we. Biologically, our cells die off. We get rid of them. We get new cells. We create new linings to our stomach, new brain cells. We're Our life goes on amidst a lot of transition, transformation, and change. And sometimes we can get a little confused when we're in that situation. Say we want to make a decision about should I go ahead with this new business or new relationship? What's going on with my health? If you are a long-time meditator, you can often go within and get those answers. Or you can use this tool called the I Ching. I like to think of it as thinking about the great wheel of life and where we are on that great wheel. We may be in a place where we have a lot of support from the spiritual, energetic realms to start that new business or new relationship, or we may not be in that place. We may not have that support right now. And so we need to hold off. Or we want to move forward in our life. We want to move ahead in our life, but we keep getting stopped, or we don't quite have the energy, the willpower, or even the brain power to do it. And we'll do a reading with the I Ching and we'll see. We'll get one, say, obstruction, meaning this is a time not to try to push forward, but a time to be still and gather our chi and wait for just the right moment to move ahead. The I Ching itself is very old, 6,000 years old, one of the oldest books, if not the oldest book in the world. But of course, it wasn't the I Ching that we see it now. It wasn't the book with all the hexagrams and the trigrams and the commentary and the explanation. The I Ching was supposedly started by, or created, I should say, by a character in Chinese history named Fu Xi, who lived 2852 BCE, so very long ago. And then the third or fourth edition, as it went through its changes, the Book of Changes went through its changes. Um, Another version was compiled in 1143 BCE by King Wen, who systematically organized the 64 hexagrams as we know them today. And extensive commentary was added to the books over the centuries, the most important being the 10 wings, we call it, which is ascribed to Confucius, who lived from 551 to 479 BCE. So this I Ching system, it's a book, but it's not a book, or I should say it's more than a book. It's a system. It's the system to check in the inner planes to see just where we are on that always moving, changing, transforming wheel of life. You know, the whole universe is constantly transforming and changing. Even our entire bodies are cells that die that we get rid of and make new cells and make new linings to our stomach or even brain cells. We are growing physically, hopefully emotionally and intellectually, and hopefully, especially spiritually. So, one maybe one thing that was very simple and easy for us suddenly becomes very difficult and challenging. Why is that? We check in with the I Ching to find out. The one that I use, the main version of the I Ching that I use is by my teacher, Hua Ching Ni. That's Huachingni, and his version is called The Book of Changes and the Unchanging Truth. So the way he proposes using this book, he says the I Ching system as a whole originated, I have some notes here. The I Ching system as a whole originated from careful observations of natural universal development which begins with yin and yang, the original binary system. These polarized energies contain a complement to each other, and really they are complementary to each other. As a matter of fact, they are really just two sides of one coin. Yeah, yang originally meant the sunny side of the hill, yin the shady side of the hill. And we see that what in Chinese called the Taiji system symbol, which we in the West often call the yin yang symbol, which yin and yang, which are linked together like this. And not only that, but they're constantly moving and shifting. Remember, I said everything is transforming and moving. Yin and yang, when yang becomes its fullness of yang, it actually transforms into yin. And when yin becomes this fullness of yin, it transforms into yang. So as they begin to interact and multiply, four basic manifestations result, which is old yang, young yang, old yin, young yin. And by further interaction and multiplication, the fundamental 8 trigrams develop. These symbols of each one of these 8 trigrams can express all events in the universe in a simple and concise manner. The 8 trigrams represent the 8 stages of universal energy whose interactions produce a given situation. This helps us maybe understand a little more about any given situation that we find ourselves in, that we might want to change or transform by our own speed and our own energy and our own chi. Each of these 8 stages of universal energy is distinct from the others. Depending on its composition of yin and yang and their interaction, we get 64 permutations of energy, which is what the 64 hexagrams are. In this ancient book, there are 64 hexagrams, which are made up of 2 trigrams. And the interesting thing about the trigrams meaning 3 lines, is that they are each is a sign of natural energy. And which it teaches us a little bit, gives us some advice about how to remain adaptable and flow like water, or keep still like a mountain, be receptive like the earth, to be creative and forward like heaven, to be innocently joyful like a lake, to have the clarity and brightness of fire, to be gently influencing like the wind, or to be awakened by the call of thunder to break through obstruction. When one is impeded by obstructions or adversity, the I Ching always offers hope and a reminder that the condition will surely change during times when the movement is difficult. Sometimes it takes a little longer than other times. Often it takes longer than what we wish would happen a lot faster. But it is by learning to adjust ourselves to the changes and transformations of the universe without as well as the universe within, then we can live a life of grace and a feeling of living our life in a groove rather than a rut. Once you gather energy, sometimes you have to stop, as I mentioned, gather your chi, gather your energy during times when movement is difficult. And then once you gather and prepare for change, on the other hand, there are times when what the I Ching calls crossing the great water or partaking in a new venture is not only right, but even necessary. To be still would cause one to lose the opportunity. Then there are other times when everything progresses smoothly. In these circumstances, the I Ching cautions not to become smug, but to remain calm and centered. In Taoist practice, we have a principle called Wu Wei, which means not doing. What it really means is not overdoing, not overextending, not pushing the river. And the I Ching tells us when we are, teaches us, I should say, that when we are in a low, say we get the hexagram, the abyss, we are in a very low state and we feel that we can't move forward. We can't create the life we would like to create. We're feeling kind of stuck. That is the time to relax, de-stress, just sit, energetically sit and wait for our chi to rise of its own. It's kind of like I always think of it as a creek that's coming down, and then it hits a beaver dam and it suddenly is stuck. And a lot of times when we're in that situation, we're going through our life and we hit an obstruction, our first thought is to crash through the obstruction somehow. But the I Ching teaches us to wait and allow the water to raise of itself, our chi to raise of itself and go over the obstruction. These are very valuable lessons one can learn from studying the I Ching, and not just doing the I Ching whenever we want to do a divination, but to actually study it more so that it becomes part of our inner evolution. Watching Ni says, studying the I Ching, one will come to learn that everything is relative and that nothing with form is static. One can also learn not to be overly rigid or assertive. The I Ching practices enables one to discern good fortune from bad fortune in any situation and to respond appropriately with a good, positive attitude, because you yourself become the main factor for changing your fortune and destiny. See, the Chinese have a term Ming for destiny or fortune. And some of that is karmic, some of that is environmental, some of that is the family you were raised in. But the Chinese believe, especially Taoist people believe, that we can change our fortune, we can change our destiny. And it takes a little time, it takes a little training, it takes a little studying, it takes a little spiritually, emotionally, and psychologically growing. But the I Ching, in the I Ching itself, there's no moral distinction between right and wrong, only between that what is appropriate or inappropriate. Nothing is rejected. Instead, one is shown how any situation can be transformed into an appropriate one. There is no such thing as an unchanging situation. Circumstances exist as one shapes them, and they are continually subject to change. As I mentioned, sometimes when we are in a really high position, say things are going really well and we have lots of energy and we're making money and things are happening, the I Ching teaches us then to apply that principle I mentioned earlier of Wu Wei, not to overextend, not to spend all our money or overextend our business or even our personal chi, because inevitably there will be a time when things will shift and we'll be in a low position. And of course, there's a lot of things we can learn from low positions. And Master Ni says, just remember that the high is always built upon the low. And finally, with the help of the I Ching, the unmanifest becomes known. By following the I Ching's guidance, one can reunite one's life with the natural potency of the unmanifest, what the Taoists call pre-heaven and post-heaven, or non-being and being. Studying the I Ching, the function of intuition is what is called in Taoism straight awareness can be developed. In other words, you won't need to read the I Ching anymore to do a reading or to get guidance in any situation. In the beginning, we use the book, and the idea is the longer we use the book and the deeper we go into the book, the less we need the book. Teaching synthesize the I Ching, synthesizes all possibilities of human life and the 64 essential patterns. Within these broad categories, more subtly defined specific stages are represented by the lines, which illustrate varying degrees of evolution and response to the whole situation. So not only is there a relationship between the upper trigram and the lower trigram, there's also interrelationships with various lines. So the way I use the I Ching is people have questions about personal development or business decisions or relationship decisions or health concerns. And especially when I'm doing them, say, on Zoom, like where I am right now, I would have the person sit with their question and sit with it for a few minutes and clear their mind, clear your mind of all extraneous thoughts. Just open your mind, open your heart to receive guidance in whatever form it takes. And then once we've sat for a few minutes together and connect our chi together, even over what I call cyber Dao, or on the phone or in person, then we can use two different systems. One system that I learned from Niwa Ching many years ago, using special seeds, or you can even use rice, little seeds with them. And that involves taking little pinches of them and counting them and getting an odd or even number. Odd number is a yang line, even number is a yin line, or you can use another very traditional using 3 coins. And you don't need to have Chinese coins. You can use any coins in whatever denomination that your country uses. And that was just tossing them 6 times and getting the line, either a yang line or a yin line, a unbroken line or a broken line. And we build those 6 lines from the bottom up, and then we get our hexagram. And I use Niwa Ching's book a lot. I've been using it for 35 years, but I also have other translations that I also often also use. And certainly, if you have a favorite translation of I Ching that you especially like, we can also bring that into the mix. Any translation of the I Ching, while the translation itself or the commentary or the explanation may be a little different, the hexagrams are always going to be the same. So it's a nice way to kind of tune in, to get guidance, to get clarity, to get support, to raise our own intuition and our own understanding of where we are on that wheel in any one specific time. So I invite you to join me, and we can do some readings together. We can do one or two. You can see it on my website, and the link is on my website at www.abode, A-B-O-D-E, Dao, T-A-O.com. And if you go to the third page down the bottom, there is the link for the I Ching. So if you have any questions, feel free to write to me at Solala, S-O-L-A-L-A, at, and then abode, home, Dao, T.com. And I look forward to serving you. So thank you for your attention.